Just now, President Trump blasted Kharg Island while ignoring the oil. Read that twice because the space between those two phrases is crucial to the future of this war, global geopolitics, and the world's energy markets. America attacked Kharg Island, the terminal that processes 90% of Iran's crude oil exports, and is the only point of entry for all of Iran's oil earnings into the international market. The facility's destruction would eliminate 1.5 to 1.7 million barrels of Iranian petroleum per day overnight. The military assets were torched while the oil infrastructure remained intact. The Jushan naval facility was struck. The control tower of the airport was hit. Destroyed was the helicopter hangar. Iranian reports state that the air defense system was momentarily muted. Iran is immediately disputing the American assertion that Kharg's air defenses were totally destroyed after returning online within an hour, according to FAR's news agency. This morning, there were around 15 explosions on Kharg Island. There was no fire in the oil tanks. The loading jetties are still in place. Iran's economic lifeline is its storage facilities, the actual process by which Iranian crude enters Chinese vessels and generates income for the IRGC, the missile program, the proxy network, and the 35 waves of Operation Al-Wad al-Sadiq 4. Trump decided to leave that infrastructure in place, which is why it is still there this morning. In the history of American coercive tactics, the decision is the most costly, carefully delivered, and operationally significant diplomatic statement. Thrawn received a single sentence from 15 explosions on Kharg Island. Everything you own can be taken by us. Today, we decided not to. Now that you know what Kharg Island is, you will see that it makes strategic sense to attack its military assets while leaving its oil infrastructure intact. Located around 25 kilometers off the coast of Iran, Kharg Island is a small island in the northern Persian Gulf. It has been Iran's main crude oil export terminal since the 1960s, prior to the revolution, the sanctions, and every stage of the 45-year relationship-defining Iranian-American conflict. Throughout it all, Kharg has been there to fill tankers. Kharg handled between 1.5 and 1.7 million barrels of crude oil per day on a typical day in the days before this crisis started, when Iranian crude was flowing to Chinese clients through the sanctions evasion network Beijing and Thrawn had created together. Not Iran's entire output, Iran's entire export potential, the crude that exits Iran and generates income, the money that powers everything. There isn't another option. This is what distinguishes Kharg from all other Iranian energy facilities. There are other export possibilities. Kharg is not one of them. It's the export choice. Kharg transports 90% of Iran's crude exports. The remaining 10% seeps via smaller establishments that are unable to handle more volume. Iran's oil revenue is unaffected by a decline in Kharg. For as long as the harm lasts, it stops, not slows, completely, instantly, and permanently. Kharg was hit by Trump. Trump abandoned the oil business. The gun that is now loaded and aimed toward Iran, his economy with the safety on, and Trump's finger on the safety represent the difference between what transpired this morning and what might occur tomorrow morning. Read Iran's response to the Kharg strike now, since it reveals just as much about the current status of the situation as the strike itself. The Iranian military uses FAR's news agency, which is affiliated with the IRGC and is one of the main channels for managing its public communications, to report over 15 explosions, confirm strikes on military targets, confirm that the naval base, airport tower, and helicopter hangar were hit, and then provide a specific and purposeful counterargument to Trump's claim. About an hour after the strike, air defense systems started up again. Iran is saying, "You did not destroy our air defenses. You suppressed them temporarily. They are back. Kharg is not defenseless. If you come back for the oil will be defended." Two narratives. Same island, same morning. Trump. Kharg's military assets obliterated. Air defenses destroyed. Oil spared as a warning. Iran. Air defenses back online within the hour. Military damage acknowledged but not terminal. Oil untouched. We are still standing. Both cannot be completely true, but both are being broadcast simultaneously to the audiences that matter. The oil markets, the Gulf states, the Iranian population, the Chinese buyers who are calculating whether Kharg is still a viable export point, the global shipping community that needs to know whether a tanker captain who approaches Kharg tomorrow is approaching a defended installation or a suppressed one. The market is pricing the gap between the two narratives. Brent crude moved. Of course, it moved. 15 explosions on Kharg Island moved the oil market regardless of which narrative is true. But the move was not the catastrophic spike that full oil infrastructure destruction would have produced. The market is pricing in the deliberate restraint. The market understands because Trump told it explicitly that the oil infrastructure is intact and that its destruction is a conditional threat rather than an executed one. The market is pricing the condition. The condition is if Iran continues to impede tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. That sentence from Trump's statement is the entire coercive architecture of the Kharg strike in one clause. America is not destroying Iran's oil revenue. America is holding Iran's oil revenue hostage to Iranian behavior in the Strait of Hormuz. Open the strait. Allow tanker traffic. Resume oil flow. Or the next 15 explosions are not at the naval base. They are at the loading jetties. This is coercive diplomacy executed with air power, at the scale that only the United States Air Force can execute it. It is also a bet, a very large, very public, very consequential bet on Iranian rationality. The bet is Iran will calculate that losing 90% of its oil revenue permanently is worse than allowing tanker traffic to resume through the strait. Iran will weigh the economic catastrophe of Kharg destroyed against the strategic cost of backing down on the Hormuz closure. Iran will choose economic survival over strategic defiance. Iran will reopen the strait. That is the bet. Now look at the Iranian side of the bet and understand why it is not as clean as Trump's statement implies. Iran offered a deal. The deal offer was Iran's attempt to close the military window diplomatically before America could close it militarily. The deal was on the table when the Abraham Lincoln was hit. The deal was still on the table when America posted $10 million bounties on Iran's supreme leadership. The deal is still on the table this morning. The Kharg strike is America's counteroffer to Iran's deal. Not a negotiated response, not a diplomatic engagement, a counteroffer delivered in the form of 15 explosions on an Iranian island with a warning attached. The warning is, we have the capability and the willingness to destroy your economic lifeline. We are choosing not to. The choice is conditional. The condition is your behavior in the strait. Make the right choice or we remove the condition. That is not a deal. That is a demand with explosives attached. And Tran is deciding right now whether to meet the demand. The Leadership Council, most of it Khamenei, hiding from a $10 million bounty large, any dispersed in hardened positions. Safavi, advising from underground, is looking at the Kharg strike and running the calculation that Trump designed the restraint to force. The calculation has 3 variables. Variable 1, what does Kharg destroyed mean for the Islamic Republic's financial survival? The answer is catastrophic. Iranian government revenue is approximately 60 to 70% dependent on oil exports in normal times. Under sanctions, with the discount selling to Chinese buyers and the shadow fleet operations, the dependence is arguably higher because legitimate alternative revenue streams have been closed. Kharg destroyed means the IRGC stops being funded at the scale that sustains the missile program. The proxy network, the 35 waves of Al-Wad AOS within weeks. The Islamic Republic cannot fight a war without revenue. The revenue comes through Kharg. Variable 2. What does reopening the strait mean for Iran's strategic position? The answer is, it looks like capitulation. It looks like Iran backing down under American military pressure. It looks like the wave campaign and the carrier strike and the 35 waves and the Kharg military assets burning produced not a negotiated settlement, but an Iranian climb. In a conflict where Iran's theory of victory has always been about demonstrating that it cannot be bombed into submission, reopening the strait in response to the car strikes is submitting to the bombing. Variable 3. What does the deal offer still on the table mean in this context? The answer is potentially everything. If the Kharg strike is Washington's way of forcing Iran to negotiate from a position of demonstrated American willingness to destroy Kharg completely, if the strike is not the ultimatum but the prelude to a negotiation, then Iran can accept a deal without it looking like pure capitulation. It can say we agreed to terms. The strait reopens as part of a negotiated settlement, not because we were bombed into submission, but rather because we negotiated from strength. After demonstrating our ability to hit the Abraham Lincoln, fire 35 waves, close the strait, kill 67 Americans, and destroy Victoria Base. Iran is able to achieve the condition without losing the domestic political ground the Leadership Council needs to survive thanks to that narrative, which claims that the deal is the result of demonstrated strength rather than the result of American bombardment. In order to provide Iran with that mechanism, President Trump left the oil standing. The question is whether Iran accepts it. Now consider the impact of the 15 automobile explosions on the pricing structure of the global energy market. Because the most significant factor in the world's commodity markets now is the difference between the destruction of military assets and the preservation of oil infrastructure. The oil markets were pricing heavily before the auto strike. Dark Ras Lufen. Ras Tanura is not online all the time. Strategic oil supplies are depleting. There's no clean ceiling at Goldman Sachs. The base case is approaching the extended conflict situation. All of the aforementioned factors together with the conditional threat to Kharg's oil infrastructure are being priced by oil markets following the strike. The conditional threat modifies pricing in a certain manner. It adds a binary result to the probability distribution of the market. Prices drop precipitously if Iran complies and the channel reopens. Prices will rise above what the market has priced for this confrontation if Iran defies and transport oil infrastructure is attacked. Both options are currently being held concurrently by the market while it waits for its assessment of Iranian decision-making. Iranian reasonableness is being priced by the market. Additionally, A leadership council that witnessed Iran's nuclear program get GBU-57 has caused the market to lose faith in Iran's reasoning. Its supreme leader was pursued by a reward and continued to launch 35 waves of strategic missiles, while its tunnels burned and its carriers struck and destroyed bases in 4 different countries. In any case, 2 scenario models are now being performed by Goldman Sachs. Compliance scenario. Oil drops to $100 or $110 as the supply disruption partially resolves, Kharg military assets are destroyed, and Strait reopens. Defiance scenario. Kharg oil infrastructure was hit. Iranian crude is permanently removed from the world market at a rate of 1.5 to 1.7 million barrels per day. In the base case, Brent crude is above 150, with long-term conflict upsides that their models are unable to cap. Trump's finger on the safety in 2 different settings on the same island. Roughly 90% of Iran's sanctioned oil exports have been purchased by China. China is the buyer whose purchases have maintained the Islamic Republic's financial stability under the 3-year maximum pressure sanctions. Iranian crude is being processed by Chinese refineries at the reduced costs brought forth by the sanctions. Iranian revenue comes through Chinese yuan payments in defiance of dollar-denominated sanctions. China's inexpensive oil source is Kharg. China's inexpensive oil supply is in mortal danger of being destroyed. China will not make its response to the Kharg strike public. There won't be a press release. There will be several phone conversations this morning between Chinese and Iranian officials, Chinese and American officials, Xi Jinping's foreign policy machinery, and whoever is taking calls in Thrawn and Washington. The most crucial communication throughout the next 24 hours of this crisis will be China's statement to Thrawn. China's message to Tan is, do not make America destroy Kharg, because China needs Kharg.